Hello, I'm Julius Mayo, coordinator of MUNDO here at The Ohio State University, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to today's meeting of the unofficial chapter of the MUNDO Midnight Society. The focus of this special gathering is the ever-important question of, are you afraid of the oval? As one of your hosts for today's special meeting, I will be joined by other storytellers from the MUNDO Midnight Society, who will introduce themselves now.
Hello, this is Dre Raymond, NDO of MUNDO.
Hello, my name is Shannon.
Hello all, this is Sloan Trusso, Hall Director for Bradley Patterson Hall, one of the spookiest residence halls on campus.
Thank you, Society members, for those introductions. Now, before we begin our haunted history tour of our beloved Oval, let's explore a little bit about you, our intrepid potential new member. Take a moment to think about your greatest fear. If you're with other people right now, and feel comfortable doing so, pause this video and chat a little bit about those chilling experiences that bring you dread. Keep in mind that your fears don't have to be creatures from a Stephen King novel or Lovecraft country, but could instead be things like public speaking, getting lost on campus, or even making a mistake. Think about how stories often relate to the ways we imagine our fears. Oftentimes, stories not only help us remember what makes us afraid, but also important lessons on what we can or should do to overcome those fears.
To really understand the history of the mysterious tales we'll be talking about today, we need to go back in time to even before the Oval existed as we know it now. Any ideas what this Native American word means? Take a minute or two to guess if you're unsure. Hituk means Buckeye and is a word from Ohio indigenous communities that is still significant today.
Speaking of indigenous peoples, at this time we want to acknowledge the Delaware, Miami, Shawnee, and Wyandot nations that were in the Ohio region long before Ohio State even existed. MUNDO respectfully acknowledges the territory in which we gather as being the ancestral homelands of the Delaware, Miami, Shawnee, and Wyandot peoples. In recognition of the rich histories and continuing legacies of these indigenous nations, as well as others who were selectively omitted from the history of the United States and the world, we encourage those within our group to engage with the lived experiences of others, both past and present, in ways that promote cross-cultural learning and active anti-bias behaviors.
Now let's get ready to start the tour. Today's stories are taken from information shared during past summer Ohio State orientations and from several Buckeye staff, students, and alums. We'll begin our tour here, under the watchful eye of William Oxley Thompson, the 5th president of The Ohio State University. Now, submitted for the approval of the unofficial MUNDO chapter of the Midnight Society, I call this tour, Are You Afraid of the Oval?
For our first story, I submit for the approval of the group, The Tale of the Ghostly Fires. This tale begins long before Mirror Lake became the cool place to relax between classes it is today. Centuries ago, it was an actual lake that fed into the Olentangy River. At that time, Native communities would gather around the lake for some of their rituals and traditions that included bonfires that could be seen for miles. Strangely, even today, some alumni have stated that on certain nights, mysterious plumes of smoke seem to appear to rise from the area where the bonfires occurred, and the sound of music and groups gathering together can still be heard as well, even though no groups meet in that location today. I would also submit another, more menacing Mirror Lake story that takes place at least 100 years after the gatherings by the indigenous communities. I call this tale The Story of the Angry Widow. In the early 1900s, in a garden where Pomerine Hall now stands, a professor committed suicide after losing money in an oil venture. His wife, saddened by his death, blamed Ohio State for not doing more to help him. She vowed that after her own death, she would return to haunt campus forever. A year after she died, students walking at Mirror Lake began to see a woman in a pink dress float across the lake in the early morning and late evening when a mist would hang over the water. The lady in pink has also been known to haunt Pomerine Hall. There have been footsteps heard when no one else was in the building, and a door that mysteriously unlocks itself.
Pink definitely seems like the color to wear in the afterlife here at Ohio State, which you'll see in my submission to the MUNDO Midnight Society entitled A Real Campus Haunt. In Mac Hall, RA is described seeing a young woman who appears seemingly out of nowhere, dressed in an old-fashioned, pink-colored party dress. While following the woman down a hallway to make sure she's a resident of the building, she often turns toward the staff members before turning back, and then walking directly into a wall and disappearing.
Let's head away from Mirror Lake now, and towards Orton Hall, where you can hear the campus chimes every hour of the day. Orton Hall is comprised of 40 different types of Ohio stones. It is also on the National Register of Historic Places, and it plays the Ohio State alma mater in Westminster chimes on its bells. Orton is also one of the oldest and grandest buildings on campus. It is named after the first president of the university. And while we hang out here for a minute or so, I submit for the approval of the group, The Tale of the Ghostly Lights of Orton Hall. Legend has it that Edward Orton still haunts the building. He is reported to spend time reading by lamplight in the top of the bell tower. And still seen today are the scorch marks on the inside ceiling of the tower room left by his oil lamp. Legend says you can see light flickering through the vertical slots which surround the turret, supposedly Orton's ghost, reading in his favorite spot. Some who have visited the tower say you can feel a frightful chill in the air and ghastly noises loud enough to subvert pesky students.
My next submission, called The Dinosaur and the Caveman, is about the ancient history that can be found both inside and outside of the building. Orton is home to the Orton Geological Museum, which includes a replica of a Cryolophosaurus ellioti found by Ohio State professor David Elliott in 1991. It is the most complete skeleton ever found on Antarctica. Meanwhile, just outside Orton Hall is said to be the ghost of a prehistoric man with humped back, thick hair, and a protruding forehead, who supposedly slams doors, bangs on things, and makes noises in and around Orton since he can't speak.
My next submission is called The Troubled Artist and takes place in Hopkins Hall. Hopkins Hall is the main building for art majors and even houses a student gallery. This building, like many on Central Campus, is also haunted by the ill wishes of a former student. A female student had gotten stuck in an elevator overnight and reportedly ended up having a nervous breakdown. She'd written things on the walls of the elevator during her ordeal. She was later killed in a car accident after she had graduated. It is reported that her writings can still be found in the elevator from time to time, and that the elevator still gets stuck on the fourth floor, particularly when a student is running late for class.
Before going on to the last story of the evening, first we'll talk about the disturbing history of University Hall. University Hall was one of the first structures built on campus, and at one point housed the sole operations for the entire university. Over the years, it has been home to students, faculty, a chapel, several colleges, and even an armory. The current University Hall is a shadow of the original structure. In 1925, one of the first editors of the yearbook, known as Macchio, died after experiencing sudden and inexplicable convulsions. Within the next few days, more students rapidly perished. An investigation found all these students had taken quinine pills laced with high levels of poison distributed by the College of Pharmacy, which happened to be located in University Hall. Lots of inquiries were made at the school, but no one ever figured out who the murderer was or how he was able to get away with such a crime.
The final submitted story for today is about a former Buckeye who definitely has school spirit. Bricker Hall is now residence to the office of the president, as well as the offices for the provosts and vice presidents of the university. However, back in the day, some strange hauntings occurred in this now esteemed building. When former trustee and cheerleader Herbert Atkinson died in 1952, his ashes were buried in a wall of Bricker Hall. On the second floor, lights flicker on and off when no one is inside of the building at the time. There have also been sightings of Atkinson in front of the plaque that marks where his ashes were placed. There are even reports of people seeing lights flashing and Atkinson drinking punch in the lobby.
And with that, we will conclude tonight's chilling meeting of the unofficial MUNDO chapter of the Midnight Society. Before we go, however, all our hosts remind you to consider one of the biggest fears we must often confront is whether or not to do the right thing when it comes to creating welcoming and inclusive spaces for all. MUNDO encourages you to spark change that is beneficial to yourself and to those within all the communities of which you are a part. And remember, do it now, because if you wait until the afterlife, like some of our alum, it can be quite unsettling for others. Thank you for watching, and be sure to continue to reflect on the ever-important question of, are you afraid of the oval?